Emma Donoghue, a lot has been written about your book Room, which was shortlisted for this year's Man Booker Prize, about how the inspiration came from the story of Josef Fritzl in Austria, who was discovered to have kept his daughter locked in a cellar for 24 years. Can you just talk us through how that story breaking led to the inspiration for your book Room?
Sure. I volunteered the information that the Fritzl case was the spark. It had been a few days since I had seen some headlines on the internet about the Fritzl case, and I was driving along a highway, and I was just suddenly walloped by the idea that a book from the point of view of a child emerging from a situation of confinement like that might be something entirely new. You know, it wouldn't be true crime, it wouldn't be about rape. It would be about a childhood, and a very, very strange childhood, but one that just might manage to say something quite universal about childhoods, which is that we all move from a tiny space gradually through to the wider social world. So the Fritzl case absolutely triggered the book, but it's not at all based on the Fritzl case.
And the voice of Jack that is the key to the success of the book, really. The way he uses language, not using grammar correctly, talking about rug, plant, melody spoon. How difficult was it to develop that voice?
Well, I'm glad you say develop, because many people think I just wrote down what my 5-year-old son said. And of course there was more craftsmanship to it than that. If you literally wrote down the way a 5-year-old spoke, any adult reader would be maddened. And also, I knew that Jack in my story would have had a very intensive kind of education. His mother has been conversing with him full time for his entire 5 years of life. So in a way, what I ended up with was a voice which has the flavour of a 5-year-old. And I did copy quite a few of my son's grammatical mistakes, but he's got the cogency and coherency of an older person. He's got a wide vocabulary, but he still has those endearing, clumsy ways of patching words together that 5-year-olds do.
Nonetheless, though, writing this story about a young mother who's incarcerated in an 11-foot square room must have been grim. The research must have been difficult.
The research was horrible. Yeah, it really was. I spent several months researching it, mostly online, which it may sound convenient, but it's actually terribly visceral. You know, the images come at you with no one introducing them or shielding you from them. So you feel really pounded by it. And I read up not just on kidnapping cases, a variety of them, but also on everything else I needed to know. I read about autistic children who find the outside world a sensory overload. I read about solitary confinement in jails. I looked at websites where children born through rape talk about how they feel. I looked up anecdotes of all sorts of so-called feral children who've been raised strangely away from society. So yeah, there's really no dark corner of the world that I didn't have to go to research this book. But then writing Room turned out to be a very pleasurable business, because in a way I'd seen the worst. I'd read up on the absolute horrors that can happen to children. So Jack's story didn't seem too bad at all to me, because I knew he would always have his mother's fierce love beside him.
You said, yes, it was grim for you, perhaps grim for you so as not to make it too grim for us as the reader. And one of the joys of reading the book, I think, was to look at the world through Jack's eyes and try and guess what it was he was seeing, because he had such an odd view of the world, just very ordinary, everyday things. Yeah,
the reader actually has to work quite hard. Even though this book is in some ways written in a deceptively easy style, the reader actually has to do a lot of emotional work, because they have to figure out what Jack means, and they have to look past Jack and figure out what life is like for his ma, who is deliberately, lovingly shielding him from the truth of her situation.
I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say that much of the book does actually take place outside of Room.
And I'm so glad you have some qualms, because many reviews start by giving every single detail of the storyline.
Well, it's difficult because you don't want to give too much away, because you don't want to spoil the enjoyment of anybody who's listening to this and who wants to go out and get the book. On the other hand, to conduct the interview properly, I really want to hear what you've got to say about Jack's interpretation. I mean, much of the book is about the interpretation from a naive pair of eyes of the modern world. What are you trying to say about the modern world?
Well, you see, it's not like I approached it with my own agenda that I wanted to critique or satirize certain aspects of the modern world. It's more that I was committed to Jack as a narrator. And by the time I, as it were, followed him out into the outside world, I saw a lot of things through his eyes. So the critique of the modern world just seemed to arise very naturally out of Jack. And in particular, the media come across very badly. Not that I've had a bad time with the media in general, but just I think anyone who's become famous for what they've suffered, like a kidnap victim, experiences the media in a very bruising way.
And as a member of the media's profession, I did have to smile quite a lot during those passages. And I should say that a lot of there are elements of the book. It's not all grim. There's elements where you do smile as you understand Jack's predicament with the modern world. But you were on the shortlist for the Man Booker Prize here in the UK.
Oh yes, that was a life-changing event.
2010. How has being on the Man Booker Prize shortlist changed things for you?
Well, to start with the negative, it's very inconvenient because seriously, ever since the end of July, I've been doing interviews in one form or another almost every day.
Well, bless you for doing this one.
Oh, that's fine. But to look at the positive, it has meant that I've now sold translations of the book in over 30 countries. People have heard of me all over the world. People are drawn to this book as a literary novel because otherwise they might just have thought, oh, it's some sordid, trashy thriller. But getting that Booker endorsement means people knows it has literary ambition.
Nonetheless, even though it seems that Room is getting as much publicity as the winner, Howard Jacobson's The Finkler Question, there must have been a tinge of disappointment at not winning.
Of course. I mean, with these events, you do get very, psyched up, and your publishers, of course, are saying to you, oh, you might win, you're the best. So, of course, you get excited. But I've now been through this a few times. I was up for 2 Canadian Literary Awards. I won one of them. I didn't win the other. So you have to learn to take these things very calmly. Otherwise, you would spend your entire year in some kind of bipolar condition, which is nonsense because who wins the prize? It's really just a matter of the opinions of a few judges. It's not the absolute truth. It's just their opinions. So either way, you shouldn't get too caught up in it.
Well, now that you've had that shortlisting nomination, what next, Emma Donoghue?
My next book is about a murder that happened in San Francisco in the 1870s. And it's never been solved, and because it was all about lowlifes, the scum of society. And I'm absolutely fascinated by this particular murder and want to find out for myself what happened.
Well, the best of luck with your next book. Many, many thanks for talking to the Interview Online, Emma Donoghue.
Thank you.